Chinese citizen is using digital currency and they've become a persona non grata, then the Communist Party can just turn their account to zero, right? So I mean, I understand then why a lot of Western institutions are like, if I put my assets in this digital currency, maybe that is a very, very substantial risk. But then it's like, well, why on earth are Thailand and the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia even interested in this? Because it seems like to them it could be just a way to set up for failure.
Well, okay, boy, you've nailed it on the head there, Matt. Look, the newest entrant into the Enbridge is Saudi Arabia, and this is a way that the Saudis can transact their oil transactions with China through this process. So that, we understand that. Um, Thailand is and under Anwar Ibrahim, uh, both Thailand and Malaysia are heavily penetrated and leaning towards China. Um, they are also parties to this regional cooperation economic program that I mentioned previously, this free trade agreement. And these countries, Thailand and Malaysia, and Hong Kong is also in there, but we now know that's China essentially. Um, Thailand and Malaysia have heavy Chinese uh, ownership of their banking institutions, and they are heavily leaning in the Chinese direction in terms of their uh, financing, their Belt and Road activities, so forth and so on. So it's not surprising that those two countries are there. When it comes to the UAE is um, is sort of an anomaly within the Middle East in that they are attempting to be the one-stop shop for exporting around the world. So the UAE has free trade agreements with some tremendous number of countries. I don't know whether it's 80, 90, 100, something like that. And the idea is that if you're an exporter, you have an incentive to set up a business in the UAE, and then you take advantage of their trading agreements around the world. And so the UAE is looking for national advantage in this digital payment system because, in theory, this is yet another financial tool that they can offer to companies around the world. If you set up operations in the UAE, then you can transact cross border deals with China or other participating countries under the Enbridge system. So the incentives for these various countries are just slightly different. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like the UAE sees itself as a uh, you know, mostly legitimate business. You can come into our store and you can buy goods and whatever, but we also have this side business. And if you're kind of on the criminal side of things, you can come in and you can, pay a little extra and get your unlicensed, pharmaceuticals or guns or whatever in our sort of side market. And that seems maybe what they're thinking of in terms of Enbridge. Is that a good analogy?
Well, no, I mean, that may be a piece of it, Matt, but I think that you might have. I think there's a strong legitimate piece to the from the UAE's perspective. That is that they're trying to develop themselves as a trading center globally, and so they're attempting to pull in businesses from other countries to do trading around the world. And so if they're an early adopter of this Enbridge system so that they can perhaps in the future provide digital cross-border transactions for companies that have been set up in the UAE. I think that it's there's a legitimate in the attitude of the UAE trade types. There's a legitimate piece that they're looking for there. I just think that coming back to the big picture here, that this whole notion of a cross-border digital currency system that China is pushing is simply not attractive to uh, many and even most countries around the world. China has lost the luster of its financial uh, security and status, and I just don't see that being widely adopted.
What about, I think BRICS is doing something similar with, they're calling it BRICS Bridge, but it's essentially also an experiment in doing cross-border payments through digital currency, but with BRICS countries. Is that more likely to take off because there are just more countries in BRICS?
I think the BRICS one, Shelley, it is more likely to take off. But again, we have to remember that China has its hand in the whole BRICS arrangement, and that's a substantial negative, as far as I'm concerned. So I think that the BRICS initiative will be far more successful than Enbridge, but it's going to be a long, hard haul for them to put it together.
I have a question about the digital yuan, and I don't know if you can answer this, but there are questions every once in a while about China becoming a reserve currency, like the yuan becoming a reserve currency. And I think we've talked before about why that's unlikely to happen because of their monetary policy and how they use US dollars to basically stabilize their own domestic economy. Um, is the digital yuan subject to the same constraints as the like physical yuan that is being traded? Do you know what I mean? Like, could they use the digital yuan in a way to that would give them more like economic leverage globally without possibly sacrificing the stability of their domestic economy?
Yes, and the reason I say that is that um, the party leadership is never going to allow the internal yuan within the country the to to be traded on an open market, because then it has to float and they lose control once they float that currency. And that's an advantage they will retain all the way up until the Ceausescu moment that we talked about earlier. But on the digital side, this is where they hope to take the dollar down. And the issue, Shelley, I think is really comes to how well will this be accepted over time? And and my own view is that we in this country have a long track record, uh, basically since World War II, of the dollar being the um, international currency of exchange, and for the digital yuan to take over the dollar's position, that's a long, hard, heavy uh, haul to make. And China's soft power, China's position in the global arena as a responsible superpower, uh, does not add to the desirability of converting to a digital yuan. So I think this is going to be a tough one to sell internationally throughout the world.
But they could try it without putting their own economy at risk, the same, unlike what they would have to do with the domestic yuan.
Correct. And that try is one of I think, one of the important pieces between their push on this whole question of Enbridge.
Well, so this is interesting. Earlier, you said that America first should not be America alone. That the U.S. need to work with all of its allies, all of the countries that have similar stakes vis-a-vis China. We see China attempting to create its own sphere of influence, to not be China alone, BRICS, Enbridge. But it seems their reputation internationally has become so tarnished that they cannot get this alliance of other countries to challenge the West together. Is China doomed to go it alone?
No, China has got some. China's got some friends, I guess. Uh, they've got Russia. They've got North Korea. They've got Iran. There may be some others that fall in over time. It's not a very desirable community from a trade economic standpoint. Um, they had recently Argentina fall out of the boat, and we don't know what else is likely to happen. They've acquired the Solomon Islands as a friend of theirs now, I guess. But you're right, Chris. Yeah, they don't have this term called stickiness, meaning people are really drawn to China and want to stay a part of their sphere of influence. So your question is really leads to what's going to happen in terms of trade as we look into the future. And what I think we're going to see is that the concept of a global trading system, you can see this now, is actually fracturing into trading blocks. And so we will have the United States, its like-minded countries, its friends, its allies in one trading block, and China with its Iran, Russia, North Korea, and a few others in its trading block, and other countries will try to play off against each other, but eventually we'll see how these trading blocks develop over time. There may be an independent one set up in Europe. I don't know.
So, what I'm hearing is as we head into economic uncertain times, we should all be investing in NFTs.